Hello and welcome back to my channel, or just a plain welcome if you're new. My name is Victoria and today I'm going to be talking about King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. Guys, this book wrecked me. Why? I can't even talk about it, it's just too emotional. If you haven't read this book yet, then what's wrong with you? Then why are you watching this video? I need someone to talk about it with. Please get on it. This is the third book in the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard, which follows Mare in a society in which people are divided based on their blood type. So you have the silver-blooded people with superpowers, and the red-blooded people who are basically the enslaved peasants and who have no powers. However, as the series goes on, you discover that there are a third class, which are reds with superpowers. So that's what Mare is. She has lightning powers. So in the first two books, she joins a rebellion and fucks some shit up. I'm not gonna get into it because we're talking about King's Cage. This whole review is going to contain spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I would suggest you go read the book and then come back. Instead of kind of following any sort of line of the plot or proper review stuff, I'm just gonna fangirl about this because it's too emotional and I don't know how to organize my brain right now. So this book opened pretty much right after the end of Glass Sword, where Mare's been taken prisoner by the nasty King Maven, who is also possibly in love with her, and so now she's his creepy love prisoner. And Mare once thought she was in love with him, but she was really in love with the persona that he was just pretending to be, and so it's all very dramatic, and I don't know if they really love each other, and they're all both broken. It's so hard. The thing that I love the most about this book series is that Victoria Aveyard is not afraid to dig into the twisted psychological state of our brains. What I love about this is that even though Mare knows that he's a twisted little bastard whose version of love is basically keeping her prisoner so that she can't get hurt, being obsessed with her and wanting to kill her but being unable to because he's obsessed sounds real healthy. What I love about this is that she's imprisoned for several months, I think it's like 6 months, and has no kindness or compassion shown to her. And so she starts to almost crave Maven's attention, as twisted as it is, because it's some kind of affection in a really weird way. And so it's never stated, but I think she basically ends up with Stockholm syndrome, or at least bordering on it. The seeds are there. But as a reader, you can tell that it is so wrong, and even Mare as a character is like, there's something, like, why do I want this? And so it's just done so freaking well, because it just feels very true to probably what would happen to anybody in that situation. I get really tired of characters who go through these really traumatizing events and nothing ever happens to them. So in Glass Sword, you basically see Mare retreating into herself with PTSD and being completely unable to connect with anyone. And in this book, when she finally hits rock bottom and can't connect with anyone because she's being prevented from connecting with anyone, the one person showing her affection becomes someone she feels something for. Those few moments of his kindness, as much as she knows that she's being used and abused, she comes to appreciate and almost feel grateful to him, at the same time being like, what the heck, why am I grateful to this psychopath who's ruining our lives? So that was just fantastically well done. And then you find out that poor little Maven is not entirely faking his kindness. That his twisted little brainwashing mother actually spent the whole of his childhood cutting out the parts of him that she didn't like. So the parts of him that felt love for people, the parts of him that were kind or that was afraid of the dark, she freaking removed them from his brain and turned him into a mindless, soulless robot that can only remember what it's like to care about people.
Oh my word.
Mother of the Year. So as you know, Alara, his mother, died at the end of the last book. Mare kind of hopes that her influence is gone and that maybe he really is a good person, but then he continues to be a psychotic bastard, so she's like, oh, clearly he's not, and he actually is horrible. And then in a moment of truth, he tells that horrible fact that actually he doesn't know who he is because he doesn't know what parts of his brain are actually him and what parts his mother created for her own ends. So even after death, she's still managing to control everything about him.
What a bitch.
Personally, I'm hoping for a redemption arc for Maven because I don't think that he's purely evil, or even if he has become purely evil based on what his mother has done to him, you find out that Cal is actually searching for some way to cure him, which, baby Cal trying to save his little brother. So I'm really rooting for that to be successful. So Mare finally is freed and gets back together with Cal, and they have this loving reunion. They finally say the words, I love you, and they have sex for the first time, and it's all so lovely. And meanwhile, I'm just kind of like, meh. And it's not that I really ship her with Maven because he's a psychotic bastard, but I don't think I really ship her with either of them because they're both flawed. But that's actually what Victoria Aveyard does really well, is her characters are so flawed. And that's not to say they're terrible, but humans are flawed. Like, none of us is perfect, and we all have a lot of really crappy parts of ourselves and a lot of really good parts of ourselves, and I think she does that really well. And obviously that's kind of on a spectrum. Some people are a lot worse than others and some people are better than others, but even her protagonists that you're supposed to root for are equally damaged and also have their problems. And so Cal Cal is unable to make a decision and is not very good at committing, and both him and Mare are terrible at communication. Like, this is one of the worst relationships for that I have ever seen. They love each other and they support each other, but do they ever talk about the things that are actually driving them to madness? No! So they suffer entirely alone, going through their PTSD without being able to speak about it to each other. They're in the same freaking bed and they're crying. Well, this isn't the last book, but it's a continuation. And they're crying and they're having nightmares. And do they comfort each other? No, because they don't know how, and they don't want to. So they just let each other suffer alone and go further and further into their shame spirals. So when they got back together, I'm not on board with this, but I'm not super on board with this, but whatever. But then in the end, which admittedly there's a lot of hints this is coming, when Cal is presented with the opportunity to retake the throne, and then Mare asks him to choose rebellion and her or the throne. Oh my gosh. Because you kind of think when he rescues her from Maven and is wearing like the red bandana, he's finally picked a side. He's picked Mare's side, he's picked the rebel side, but no, he never did. And because they can't communicate and they're not good at compromising, and they never were, they can't do it here either. So they're both like, pick me.
Pick me, pick me.
Both of them are mutually like, nope. They're both like, nah, bruh. Nah, bruh. So now they're friggin' on opposite sides of a war. And that's how this book ends. And that's why I'm broken. This complete lack of foundation of trust in their relationship finally rears its ugly head, and then they walk away from each other, and it's very sad. Then the book ends with Mare kind of being like, screw both of them. I got a war to fight. And I'm like, okay, you go, girl. And it's kind of cool because that's been a theme throughout, I think, that they always were on opposite sides. You can't really have it all when you come from different worlds, so I feel like it's consistent with the storytelling. Yeah, Mare didn't really know either Maven or Cal that well throughout their mutual relationships, so I feel like this is kind of the natural conclusion of all the problems that they'd had previously. And they talk about Cal's inability to choose or make decisions throughout the whole series, and so I feel like as much as that's painted as a bad thing and people want him to choose, I think that was the only thing keeping him and Mare together. Probably the reason he was refraining from choosing was because he knew that if he chose, they wouldn't be together anymore. So it was this kind of weird, I think that I'm in love with you, so I'm gonna try to just stand in the neutral, but once he's actually pushed to stand up and fight for something, that something is not Mare. Which is actually excellent in my mind, because if you remember at the end of Red Queen, almost the same choice happens, where Mare spends the entirety of Red Queen trying to push him to choose her instead of the kingdom, and then when it's all revealed that Maven's behind it and he's a dirty little bastard, he says something like, he would never have chosen you. So even though Maven put the idea in her head, like, he'll choose you, get him to choose you, it's revealed, no, his kingdom will always come first. It would never have been you. And so I feel like it's really great to see that character trait kind of playing out across the series. It's not like, now that he finally realizes he loves her, he's willing to completely walk away from everything that he was for this girl. No, he still is him. His love is part of that, but like, his kingdom was always first. That's who he is. It's who he was raised to be. He can't let it go. So I just feel like it's really excellent storytelling. And that brings me to kind of what I feel like is one of the main themes of this series, is the formation of character in terms of who we are, not like literary character, like our human character. There's some line that's something like, all of us are made by someone. They create this tie that can never be cut, this thread of steel in us that is permanent. And I just find that so interesting when thinking about like the nature versus nurture philosophical debate, like how much of our personalities is how we're born and how much is the environment that we're raised in. And I feel like the perspective that's kind of shown here is that nurture has a lot to do with who we become. Yeah, so I just thought it was a really interesting contribution to that whole conversation. Yeah, seeing how it's actually literally presented with Maven, how he physically is made by his mother messing around in his brain, but how Cal is made by being raised to be a ruler and not being able to shake that, and how Mare is the most interesting here though, because I can't figure out who she is, and I think that's because she can't really either, because she's put on all these personas, and so this book is kind of her coming back to who is Mare Barrow and what do I want to fight for, except for to me it still feels like it's prompted by revenge. It's all about like, I want to kill him, I want to win this war and whatever, even though this book, she's not as bloodthirsty as Glass Sword. She's kind of come back to herself and been like, okay, so I think I don't want to fight anymore, but I will fight because I believe in this cause. But I feel like it's still slightly blurred with, do I believe in this cause or do I want to murder Maven? And so in the context of people are made by their environment, I feel like a lot of her, at least recent character development, has been made by Maven. And so I find that really interesting that her possible primary motivation for her ongoing actions is him. On another note, when did Evangeline get so freaking awesome? Can we just take a moment to have a round of applause for her character? I freaking hated her in the first two books, and then suddenly she just appeared out of nowhere being fantastic. Also Cameron, I think because we only had Mare's perspective in the last book on Cameron, she kind of seemed annoying, but now that you get her perspective, she's freaking hilarious. Like, all the things that bother me about Mare Cameron just says. I'm like, thank you. So it's not just me, it's a personality thing. On that note, do I like Mare? Do I not? I can't work it out. I love this series. I love the writing. I love the character development. I love the plot. I love everything about it except for Mare. And it's not that I don't like her as a character per se. It's more like I think I don't like her as a person. Like, I find her so irritating, kind of unsympathetic. She's just so unfeeling, but like she feels too much. Does that make any sense at all? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a sympathetic person, but like she spends the whole time pushing people away and just being a complete cow and then being like, and now I'm alone. And I'm like, well, why are you alone? Because you decided that you had to be alone to function. That's what makes the writing good though, because that's part of her PTSD. It's kind of taking the quirks of her personality and changing them into the extreme version of that. So I feel like that makes sense in the context of the story, but it also makes her really hard to read sometimes because I'm like, oh, you're such an idiot. Just be honest about how you feel and let people in. Which, again, she kind of gets there at the end of this book, but then Cal goes and chooses the crown over her. So now I just feel like the next book she's gonna be all over the place again, being like, and I betrayed again. Because this constant refrain in her brain is anyone can betray anyone. And that's definitely a theme, but it's also like, it's making it kind of hard for her to believe anything else when everybody's such a shit face. Now it's time for Inquillery's Inquiries, the part of the show where Inquillery inquires. Why do some of the rebels waste valuable time and resources dyeing their hair to match their lightning powers? And why doesn't Mare want to join them? I know I would! Why are the Calor brothers such shitfaces? Why can't Mare and Cal communicate like healthy adults?
Because they're not.
Why doesn't Evangeline's animal-controlling mother summon an army of gorillas to fight for them? I know I would! If there are other colors of lightning powers, why is Mare's purple? And where does the color come from? Why is everyone in love with Mare when she's a ruthless little ball of selfish fury? Why do neither of Mare's parents have a superpower? Why does Maven conveniently use bubbles when we were all secretly hoping for a nude scene? Why do Mare and Cal wait to have sex until it's the muddiest, most stormy day when they've shared a bed for months and have access to other beds currently? Why are two people apparently in love so unwilling to compromise for one another? Isn't that what love is about? Why did nobody step in when they noticed Alara cutting the humanity out of her son's head?
Hello?
And if they didn't notice, what kind of father and brother does that make Tiberius Sr. and Jr.? How did Alara become so deranged she was willing to cut the humanity out of her son's head? Why is everybody such a power-hungry bastard? Why does humanity suck so badly? There are probably a lot more things I could say, but really I'm just kind of stuck in the oh my gosh, Maven is just an abused child kind of headspace, and so I'm kind of incapable of focusing on any other aspect of the book currently. But yeah, those are some of my thoughts that have been kind of burning holes in my brain since I finished this. So please comment and tell me you feel the same, because I feel really traumatized, and I need someone else to feel traumatized with me, because that's also healthy. Overall, this book series is just so good. I did find Glass Sword a little bit slow, but any kind of lulls from that sequel are completely erased in this. This is just so freaking good! Mostly because Maven. I would highly recommend this series, and I'm really sorry if you haven't read them and you're like, what the heck is she talking about? Because I didn't really give a plot overview or anything, but I just wanted to gush, so I hope that some of you want to gush with me, and if you haven't read these, but you're still somehow watching this, I'm really sorry for spoiling everything, but still go read it, because it's fantastic. This series is one of my current favorites. I don't know what else to say. Get on it. That's all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!